Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Patricia Zurita-Ona. She is a doctor and an expert in anxiety for high achievers. And today we're going to be exploring the impact of that and creating a story that helps her illustrate her promise of a more peaceful, calm life. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Dr. Patricia Zurita-Ona. Dr. Patricia Zurita-Ona, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kai.
Today, we're going to be talking about anxiety for high achievers. And it just so happens to be something that I have experience in. But before we talk about me or all of you listeners out there, Patricia, will you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Sure. Well, I am located in the beautiful Bay Area in California. I am a licensed psychologist, and for the last 18 years, I have been running a boutique therapy coaching practice that specializes on acceptance and commitment therapy for anyone dealing with anxiety. So day by day, I'm working with overthinkers, overachievers, dealing with some type of worry, fears, or anxiety about stuff that happened in the past or stuff that could happen in the future. And so that's what I do.
Yeah. I have a very close friend
Mhm.
who works a lot in procrastination, in decisions, and anxiety. And I'm curious about, like, I saw on your website, and there's things like the word procrastination. You didn't actually
Mm,
say this, and I brought this up, but I've seen this on your website. It's a
mm.
symptom of anxiety and the things that you're talking about. But in my experience, and it
Yeah,
seems like you work with people of all levels, and we're talking about high achievers in particular. And
yeah.
for high achievers, what is procrastination might not naturally occur to them that procrastination is happening, or it's a word that they don't identify with. Do you think that that's the
Yeah.
case and it's kind of a blind spot for a lot of these people?
Yeah. I think, in the Bay Area, there is a lot of people who are go-getters, doers, type A people, right? So by nature, they are overthinking stuff, and that's the crowd that I work with. And I think what happens is that we all postpone things, right? If you look at your life the last week, did you postpone something? Did you postpone a meeting? Did you postpone making a phone call? So that's a rhetorical question. The challenge is that when it becomes a pattern in our life and we are putting things off, even though we know we're going to pay a high price later on, they are going to cost us emotionally. They are going to cost us financially. They are going to affect our relationships. They are going to cost our promotion at work, right? So the challenge that comes with that is sometimes when people notice that, they think it's going to get better. And they tell themselves, we'll just tackle this next week. I have time. We have all those tricky thoughts coming up, negotiating the agendas, right? But then at the end, sometimes people do things at the last minute and then they tell themselves, okay, I can do this, it's fine. But sometimes they really miss deadlines, right? And that's
Hmm.
how the pattern starts reinforcing. The challenge is that procrastination, it's really when people are dealing with a lot of procrastinating behaviors, it is really something that is suggesting they are dealing with an emotion that is hard for them to manage, can be boredom, can be fear of making mistakes, can be fear of coming across as a failure, can be too much stress that a task comes with. They are also dealing with rules or ruling thoughts that their mind comes to them, telling them that in order to do X, you need to have Y. If you want to record this podcast, you have to have first this equipment, otherwise, you cannot do this. Or
Hmm.
if you want to write, you need to have a particular feeling. If you don't have that feeling, then you cannot write. So those are rules that are leading a person to procrastinate. They also have all types of reasons, like I am too tired. I have enough time. This is not going to take me too much time. It will be really, really short. Or sometimes people procrastinate because when they look at a task, they say, this is very mundane. Like, why do I have to do this? There is no benefit for me to do this right now. They don't see the impact of that activity in the long term. in their well-being, right? They don't see the connection between that mundane thing and their values, basically. So all those things led a person to procrastinate. But a lot of people, they may not realize they are developing and reinforcing a procrastinating cycle until it's too late, until they have, I don't know, they have missed deadlines to pay taxes, they have missed promotions, they have missed friendships, they're struggling for 8 years completing a dissertation at the school. So only then people realize this is a problem. But reality is that this pattern is being reinforced very early.
And I think one of the important things to note is, like, you gave a few examples of this, but like procrastination
Mm,
isn't just about not doing your homework or your like the
no.
work that you're supposed to be doing, and that's the first place our thoughts go. But
Yes.
in my personal experience and in what I've seen in a lot of people, we don't procrastinate on our homework or our work or our business things. And in fact, we're probably like so much over invested in these things that we procrastinate on things like going to the gym or spending time with friends or creating quality things or cultivating our lives outside of the work that we're doing. And I've seen, having hundreds of interviews on this podcast, that is the core story that almost everybody comes with of, I didn't realize it was costing me this much until it was
Yeah.
really bad.
Yeah, that is so true, right? When we think about procrastination or perfectionism, we're usually thinking about these academic areas or career areas. But richer lives and joyful lives have other areas, right? And I think people can procrastinate having a hard conversation in a caring relationship, right? People get overly concerned about rocking the boat and not saying what they think, what they feel, or what they need. And they keep postponing this, right? So I think there is so much to say about how these behaviors, whether that's a procrastinating behavior or a perfectionistic behavior, can show up in many areas of our life, not just academic or career, but also in our friendships. Um, think about perfectionists for a second. Let me just switch the gears a little bit.
Hmm.
With perfectionism, the core fear is this fear about being a failure. I am petrified about failing. And I have rules about how things supposed to be, how I'm supposed to respond, how others supposed to behave. So perfectionist can be focused on oneself or can be focused on another person. A perfectionist can be in so many areas of our life, including our friendships. We all have some friends in our life that sometimes they are the ones that are available 24/7. They are the ones that say yes to everything. They are the ones that really, want to be supportive with you no matter what's going on in their lives because they are afraid of disappointing us. They are very concerned about saying no to us. They are concerned about telling us, I don't want to watch that movie. I don't want to listen to the song. I prefer this. So the perfectionist is more a form of interpersonal perfectionist, and they are very preoccupied with failing as friends, and they have these high standards for themselves. So what happens is that they actually start becoming much more resentful, right? Because it's hard if you're all the time there saying yes, yes, yes to everything and to every request that comes to you. So with procrastination, it's a little bit the same, right? What happens when we postpone hard conversations in our relationships with the people we care about? The relationship doesn't grow, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
All relationships are going to grow because we are willing to experience the discomfort that comes with having a hard conversation with saying that something didn't work for us. But many times, because of these procrastinating patterns that have been reinforced, we also avoid that. We skip that. We delay that until things get worse and worse. They don't get better. They just get worse.
One thing that's impressive about people is our
Mm,
ability to deceive ourselves in this.
mm,
Um,
mm,
we
mm.
very rarely are thinking, I'm procrastinating having this difficult conversation. It's
Yeah.
not common that somebody would have that thought. They would meld it with something like, I need to make sure that I know what I'm talking about, or they have excuses that
Yeah.
frame them as the good person or the right person, and they're not bad people. But we
Yeah.
we put these lenses over things, and we do these things, and we feel even justified in doing these things, And these patterns, in an individual's life can add up. These patterns can drain um, energy out of an entire organization or a movement. And we can feel like we're doing the right thing while doing them.
Yeah, yeah, it's so tricky, right? As you know, within acceptance and commitment therapy, one of the core process is looking at how we're relating to thinking. And one of the things that we invite people to keep in mind is to acknowledge that their mind, your mind and my mind, has a life on its own. Our mind is all the time going on blah, 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 chop, 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 yap, 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 right? It tells us all types of things. So we have a lot of content in our heads. We have busy minds from the moment we open our eyes to the moment we fell asleep, right? The mind doesn't stop, doesn't take vacation, doesn't take holidays. And one of the things that the mind does, in addition to generating content, is to connect things. It's connecting things all the time. And what happens when we encounter something we don't like a task or a difficult conversation or something that is boring to me, the mind will come up with a narrative, right? We call that reason-giving thoughts. What you're referring to is a reason-giving thought, right? And the challenge with those reasons is that they sound very coherent. It's like a coherent trap. They make sense, right? And because they make sense, then we act on these associations that the mind created. So that is why in ACT, it's very important for all of us to learn to disentangle from thinking. And when the story comes, when the narrative comes that tell us blah, blah, I think you have time, you don't need to do this, you can do it later, you need to be in the right mood to do this. We have to ask ourselves, is that thought helping me to get closer or farther away from who I want to be in this moment? Is that thought helpful or unhelpful? Is that serving me in this moment or is taking me farther away from where I want to go? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise we really become prisoners of our mind. If we go along with every single reason the mind tells us, with every story that seems very coherent, right, and makes sense rationally speaking, then many times we're engaging in behaviors or action that take us farther away from where we really want to go. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why, again, learning to watch our mind as a device that has its own life, that is going to be generating content and connecting all types of things is very important. I think it's a life skill, to be honest.
Definitely. So, Patricia, tell us about
Mm,
maybe a little bit about how you work on this. How is
mm,
your
mm.
process different? What do you believe that's different, or how do you get people to where they want to go in a way that's faster, easier, or more accessible, or just unique so that it lasts?
Yeah, that's such a great question, right? I think in general, when I'm working with any person who is an overachiever and overthinker, the first thing is to humbly acknowledge that our mind has a life on its own. I think that's the biggest thing. In the information era, we have been told that we are defined by how we think, right? There's somehow for whatever we think is the absolute truth, and we must listen to those thoughts. But I think it's an act of humility to step back and acknowledge that we do not have control of the mind. It is humanly impossible. The mind comes up with content on and on and on. This sounds very simplistic. I think so. But I teach my clients brief, mindfulness exercises, brief diffusion exercises, which is an act skill to really start watching what the mind does. The mind usually is going to come with predictions about the future. It's going to come with ruminations about the past. It's going to come with rules and judgments. But the thing is, it's an act of cognitive humility to learn to watch the mind as something that, I carry. Wherever I go, my mind comes with. So that's, I think, a very, very important step. Because when you learn to acknowledge that your mind has a life in its own, you liberate yourself from trying to control the mind. You learn to make room for all those annoying, yucky thoughts. The thoughts that tell us, something is wrong with you, you are weird, you're a loser, you cannot do this, or all types of noise that comes up in the mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we learn to have them as the stuff that the mind does, then we have much more energy and intention to focus on, okay, what is my next step? What's the next thing I want to do with my feet, my hands, and my mouth? So I think the first part is really deconstructing this control agenda of trying to change thinking. When
I
in
think
fact, Mhm.
One thing I want to add in this,
Yeah.
as somebody who has had a journey of both physical and mental health, there's been
Mm,
times where my biology is in a state of anxiety. So
sure.
I have not good gut health, or I'm feeling a little sick that day, and I will feel bad. But
Mm,
the mind, to your point, my mind has never been clear enough or accurate enough to say, well, it's because my gut health's a little off today, or I didn't sleep enough last night. We make the story, and this is to your point, like my mind makes up, well, it's because I'm not working hard enough, or this thing's going to happen, or I'm going to fail. And your brain
yeah.
just jumps in to make meaning for the feeling. And what I'm hearing here is that if we can learn to separate ourselves from it and not believe
Mhm.
everything that's said, and just kind of, it actually allows us to work with it instead of it being this thing that's just kind of eating away at us.
That's right. That's right. When we learn to have that story, right? As we can look, we can watch the story, we can see the story, we can make room for the story. But the idea is to really liberate ourselves from holding into the story as the absolute truth. And sometimes I like to tell my clients, and this is another metaphor I use, that our minds are not the oracle of truth, right? The minds are just not the oracle of truth. The minds have their life in their own, and they were always going to come up with content. But so answering to your question, to me, that is an act of humility. Really, really, again, when we have been told that we're defined by we think. So I think it's an act of humility to acknowledge that the mind will do in its own life. I do have a choice, and I can put my intention in how to respond to the noise that my mind comes up with. That's the skill. And that's what research has showed that we can have joyful, rich, and happy lives when we embrace that choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be the first thing that I try to teach client, because especially with overthinking, there is a lot of rationalizing already going on. There is a lot of people already playing a chess game in their mind, right? They have a negative thought, they want to replace it with a positive one, and it works for 5 minutes until they have another negative one again. Or they start thinking about something bad happening in the future, they replace it again with another one. Overthinking, right? All what it does is really protect us from feeling uncomfortable feelings, protect us from sitting with uncertainty and unpredictability that we don't like. So that's what we have to just let the mind be. And then we can actually choose different actions, more effective, more skillful ones. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what is different, right? So I think in my approach, and this is also my own experience when I was learning ACT in 2004, when I attended my first ACT workshop. It felt like a very counterintuitive model. It felt like this humongous shift I was doing. Because by that time, I was training all on the approaches in which you are looking for evidence for and evidence against for your thoughts, really rationalizing, challenging, restructuring, right? So when I learned this approach of making room for these thoughts, accepting that the mind has in its life, it felt very counterintuitive. Um, but I can tell you it's extremely transformative and liberating to let the mind has its own life. That doesn't mean that all thinking is bad, of course, right? Like if I'm planning a vacation or preparing for the podcast, right? Of course, I'm going to use my mind and my thinking about it. That's very appropriate in this context, very adaptive, right? But if I start anticipating about the 101 things that are going to go wrong, or if I stop doing the things that are important to me every time my mind tells me, what if you fail? What if you make a fool of yourself? That's different, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
very different. So it's important, I think, to notice when the mind is helpful and when it's not. And a lot of times it's not helpful. I can tell you that.
I want to hear about just one of those times, but when it
Hmm,
comes to you, I want to read back to you some of the
sure.
notes that I've been taking about the problems that the people we're speaking to are facing. And I want
Mhm.
you to leverage all of your skills in empathy and embodiment and understanding. And I want you to feel in your body where these words occur for you.
Mm. Mhm.
A time where you were constantly worried about the future and the past. You weren't able to be present. Any emotion was difficult to manage, and it would lead you into all kinds of things. Your
Mm.
thoughts were making these rules in your life that were keeping you even more miserable and stressed. It's impacting your work, your friendships, your relationships. You're petrified of failure. Um, and it's hard to tell like what choices you're making are really working or what can be trusted. And when, Patricia, did you feel like this?
When have I not having those thoughts or feelings? That's a question for me. I think um, I have so many moments for each one of them as you were reading. Like in this moment in my life, I am in the process of making a big financial decision. So, of course,
Hmm.
my mind was anticipating terrible scenarios. What if I make a mistake? What if this is not a right decision? What if I'm able to manage this later on? There are all types of worries about what will happen in the future, right?
Hmm.
And and that comes for me with like my heart beating fast a little bit. And the way that I manage that is by going into problem
So hold
solving.
on,
Go
hold
ahead.
on, hold on. But
Yeah,
we don't
yeah,
we don't want to talk about I want to talk about the experience of this. I want a
sure,
very
sure.
specific moment. And if it's something that's still kind of in progress, it sounds like this financial decision is something that's
It's
ongoing.
in progress.
A moment in your life, this would probably be earlier on, that
Okay.
maybe one of the moments that inspired you to do this work, where you felt and saw the consequences of these and really decided that something needed to change or you needed to learn from this.
Yeah, you see, so I have many, many key moments in my life. So let me choose one of them because there are many coming up to my mind right now. They were just key in which I had these raw experiences and have been inspiring to me to do this work. Yeah, there's so many. So perhaps,
Was there a time where you recognized that your these anxiety tendencies were having an impact in other people's lives that were important to you?
I think my anxieties have impacted me more than other people.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh, I have no
yeah,
doubt
I
about that.
see. Yeah, I think I don't let me know how this sounds. Let me know how this sounds. But there is speaking about my anxiety shows up in many ways, right? I think in this life we travel with a collection of anxieties. Our fears evolve and morph as life happens to us. A couple of years ago, I was trying to maximize the decision I was making about buying a TV. And my fear was about making the wrong decision. And as a classic maximizer, what do? I start researching for different types of TV, right? And I think this fear about making mistakes for me, sometimes can be big, right? Can be about financial matters, can be about the work I do, can be the book I'm writing, can be about buying a TV, something perhaps so simple like that. But they usually come in my body, like my heart starts beating fast and my hands get sweaty. And and what I did at that time, I started researching for different types of TV. I found one TV, a smart TV that works fine. But believe it or not, thanks to wonderful Amazon Prime, I bought five TVs. A1, big one, C1, the same model, just different versions, right? A1, big one, C1. And my friends will come like, why are you doing something like this, right? And it's because I needed to make sure that the resolution of the screen is the one that I like, because I love to watch a good film, right? So I spent maybe 2 weeks testing each one of these TVs, these five TVs, these humongous TVs. Then I can make the proper decision. And then, of course, I spend a lot of time bringing them back for a return, right? Inside, that was a moment in which my fear of making a wrong decision went very, very loud, right?
Hmm.
When I look back, I can tell you that, well, I have noticed a change in the resolution from A1 to C1. Not really. I told
Yeah.
myself that I was going to notice that, right? But my fear about making a poor decision that I could regret later on led me to do this, buying five TVs, testing each one of them, torturing everyone with them, because of course I will be taking pictures of the same image on the three TVs running and then send it to my friends. Do you see the difference? Do you see the blacks? Do you see the whites? And it's some reassurance, right? And most people will say nothing, Patricia. I don't see anything. I'm like, oh boy. And then, but how can you see it? So I think that was a tiny behavior in which I was trying to maximize my decision because of the fear of making a wrong decision with a TV. Today, I wouldn't invest my time doing that. But there you go. That was a mundane situation.
Perfect. Perfect. And no lessons or solutions in it. This is exactly what I wanted. And it's
And this,
funny. Yeah, it's
it
just
is
what I
funny, and it's a messy one, and it's a real one, right? It's a real one.
yeah, but it hits all of the notes. Okay. Another story. The opposite emotional frequency. This is a time where you felt you caught your mind and you said, no mind, I'm in charge today. And because of this, you felt more excited and confident about your future. You felt more present in the now. You were confident in your ability to get what you wanted and trust yourself. And maybe you realized that this journey that you've gone through could help so many more people.
Sure, sure. The one that comes to my mind, every time I'm giving a talk, whether that's 100 people, 300 people, 500 people, my mind will tell me, you are going to mess up. You don't know what you're talking about. What are you going to do? Your career is over. My mind tells me the same thing when I'm publishing a book. Even though experientially I have been doing this work for years, even though I'm very familiar with the material, right? So when my mind tells me this and I'm in front of the audience, I expect that my mind is going to give me some noise. And I visualize those thoughts as little ghosts on my shoulder, right? They're like little ghosts just shouting at me. You're going to make a fool of yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. I make room for them. I expect them. I'm not surprised they're going to show up. Take a deep breath and start talking, introducing myself, asking people how they are doing, where they are coming from. So I have learned, because my value is to discriminate act for anxiety in any setting I will go to, especially giving talks to large crowds, and my mind will tell me blah, blah, blah.
Can you
Right?
give
So I
me a
have learned to
specific talk?
well, the TEDx talk is, one of the biggest things I have done. That was extremely anxiety provoking, and it was an act of vulnerability and an act of love. Uh,
Perfect. Give
when
me
you walk
one
into
detail about being on the stage. Lights, seeing people. What's something you remember?
lights, the moment that you walk into the stage, you have this red dot carpet that you have to stand on. You walk there, you put your foot there. The moment you are there, you cannot see. Everything is bright. You have like at least six lights on you, right? So there is
Hmm.
this adjustment, right? You're like a little bit confused. My mind, of course, told me all kinds of things. Why are you doing this? You're going to make a fool of yourself. My mind usually tells me, your career is over, Patricia. This is it. No one is ever going to work with you. Took a deep breath again, make room for that. And as you see, as I am talking, I'm holding my hands like this. It's an act of openness and acceptance to me. It's really just open up and gently holding the experience, knowing that I am going to just look again. If I could see in that moment, wait for my eyes to clarify, and then start with a talk. But it was a very vulnerable moment, and my mind did its own minding, of course. And I still choose to do what was important to me. Um,
Perfect.
if people will ask me, because it was very stressful, will you do it again? The answer is yes. It was completely worth it because it was a values-based move to me. The anxiety, the stress, the preparation, the having all these bright lights on my face were completely worth it. I will do it again and again.
Great. Would you like to hear your story?
I'm ready to hear my story. Yes. And thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for everybody coming here today. I know you're here because you care and you care
Mm.
deeply. You want to live a good life, you want to make an impact, and you want to leave the world better. And it's one of the best qualities about you and me. And sometimes
Mm.
it can also cause us some problems. I remember a couple of years ago making what should have been a simple decision to buy a new TV. And I fell into a pattern that was quite familiar. As I started thinking about a TV, the same voice in my head would come up. You've got to make this right. It's got to be the right one. It's got to be the right fit. If we don't get this right, things are going to go wrong. And I start researching. There's this weird addictive rush of both anxiety and some kind of engagement that's lighting me up. And I start looking across Amazon and have tabs open of all of these different TVs. My heart starts beating faster and I'm not sure what's the right one. And I have to make the right choice. It has to be the perfect resolution. You see, I find myself making these rules up about how things have to be. And I end up pushing buy on the shopping cart for not one TV, but 5 TVs. And I remember having my friends come over and I was insisting on checking if they could see the difference in the different resolutions. And they're like, Patricia, what's going on? Why are you doing this? And the strangeness of their question in that moment snapped me out of it for a sec. The thing that I had been doing that had felt right, that had felt like the thing I should be doing, all of a sudden is cast in a new light and it feels totally absurd. How did I get hijacked like this? 5 TVs. And I start to look across the room to my friends and I wonder to myself, where else is this happening in my life? This little decision has totally gotten me all wired up. And anything important like my business, my relationships, everything else, if I'm like this with a TV, then something needs to change. And it's moments like that that occur to us in so many of our lives, in some moments mundane, and in many of the most important moments that I realized that this pattern needed to change inside of me. And I started putting together the tools to do it. I wanted to find a way to separate my mind from myself, to actually be able to work with it, to make a choice on whether when I wanted to listen to it or not. I wanted to put the choices back in my control and not in this weird programming that seemed to come up and take over anytime things got a little strange. And I wanted to be able to live a life without fear. And over the course of many years and a lot of costly and painful mistakes, I've learned everything I could about behavioral therapy, about many different techniques and tactics, all putting together to put me back in control of my own life. And I can remember not too long ago hearing that same voice again. This time not for a small moment, but for one of the biggest moments of my life. I'm about to speak at a TEDx summit. I'm walking and approaching the stairs and I hear that same voice. Your career is over. Why are you doing this? You're not ready. Get out of here. And in the past where I might have listened to that, this time I smile. I see that voice as just little ghosts on my shoulder and I brush them off. And I get up on the stage. Bright lights shining in my face, very disorienting. I could have taken over, but instead I share my vision and my message for a world without anxiety, without fear, of people living in alignment with themselves. People, as I come back down, they're like, wow, I could never do that myself. How are you so brave? What would you do that again? And every time I would do it again, because it's worth it, because I'm back in control of my life and my driver's seat. And in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to teach you exactly how you can do that too.
Beautifully said. I'm very impressed. Beautifully said. My goodness, you're a magician of words and stories. I love it.
Thank you
I
so
love it.
much. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you today.
I am so grateful we have a chance to have this conversation and to hear how you create the story. It's beautifully done.
Oh,
Beautifully done.
well, Patricia, it's been beautiful experiencing and creating this story with you, and it's very, very important, near and dear to my heart. Do you have any closing thoughts for us today, and where can we go to learn more about you?
I think my closing thoughts will be inviting people listening to us to watch their mind, watch their mind. And every time they have a uncomfortable thought, a painful thought, a self-criticizing thought, to ask themselves, if I go along with this thought, does my life expand? Does my life shrink? Am I the person I want to be, or am I getting away from who I want to be? That will be, I think, my last words. And I do have a newsletter. Is people have to go to the website thisisdrz.com and they can subscribe to my newsletter. It's called Playing It Safe, and I send emails usually twice a month. So that's what I'm sharing, all these active skills for overthinking and other types of anxiety struggles. I
You're
think
back.
you're back. You're back. I think the image froze. Yeah.
Yeah, we froze. Hopefully it caught the last little bit about the newsletter. So I think we're good on that. I'll make sure to let them know to edit this and get that figured out. So yeah, I think we can just close this off.
Okay. Thank you so much. My goodness, you are really a magician of words. I love it.
Dr.
It's
Patricia, thank you so
incredible.
much for joining us on the Story Engine podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.